I'm just going to cut in real quick and give a little bit of a promo for myself and my crash course. This one is coming September 18th, 19th, and 20th. We're going to be live, online, virtual with me an hour a day. I know you can fit that in to understand how to navigate the hospital birth system. It is complicated. It is tough. Hospitals, nurses, doctors, we have our own birth plan for you. So how are you supposed to make sure that yours works? Join me. The hospital crash course, you're going to learn everything from getting admitted to birth, to recovery, to how to work with the nurses and what your rights and responsibilities are. Go to myfriendsandnurse.com/crash course to join and register today. Hey, welcome to episode 9. I'm so excited to say that because I've read somewhere that most podcasts only last 8 episodes. So bam, 9, here we are. And I already have 10 and 11 ready to go too. So where you at? We're just at the beginning, let's be honest. And I'm still learning how to do all of this, but I just want to get my voice out there, right? It's all about having a voice. Where's your voice? We need education, we need experiences, and we need to set our expectations and boundaries as we continue learning and growing. And that's what I'm doing, because then when you have a voice, you're going to know exactly how to use it. We are on a call today with Melanie Wachsman Bingham, and she is a doula from Los Angeles. She's a certified lactation educator at UCLA, and she owns doula services. It's Melanie Wachsman Doula, or you can find her at doulamelly.com. I will have all her information in the show notes. But she is a gentle sleep educator for newborns and a consultant with a sleep savvy certification. So I had to talk to her about newborn sleep, which really transfers to mom and dad sleep, right? How are we going to get that sleep in the middle of the night with our babies crying? And everybody knows about it, heard about it. No, you're not going to get any sleep. You're not going to get any sleep. Yeah, we know. And there is some truth to that. But if we set up a routine and our expectations and then prepare as you listen to this, perhaps you're going to get some great tips and tricks and a few things that I learned today as well. Like, you don't want your baby to go more than 4 hours in the first few weeks of sleeping. But let's get into it. Let's get Melly on the phone and discuss with her everything we want to know about newborn sleep and some feeding tips. Welcome to the Birthling Podcast, presented by My Friend's a Nurse. I'm your host, Colette McCullicher, a high-risk labor and delivery nurse right here in sunny California. I'm also an OB certified specialist, birth educator, lactation expert, and mother of 2 beautiful daughters. I am passionate about guiding you through the miraculous journey of pregnancy and childbirth, using evidence and history and asking the reason why. I have some incredible medical friends and colleagues, and we're all here to help you navigate this often overwhelming birthing hospital system in the United States. My goal is to gain trust in birth, improve this system, and provide some valuable insights. Let's make this journey a little less daunting and a lot more joyful. Let's get into it. Oh, well, thank you so much, Melanie, for being here today. I'm really excited to have this discussion with you, especially with regards to the relationship between how we feed our baby and how the baby sleeps and how we sleep as well. So we'll dive into that. But first, tell me a little bit. I've already introduced you, but tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got into this niche, and where you're located. Tell me a little bit more.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's such a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me. So let me start with, I guess I have always had the calling, and I never really listened to it. And then fast forward several decades, actually, a girlfriend asked me to support her with the birth of her baby. And I said, totally, I would love to. That would be amazing. And then the universe just kind of busted open. So I did my birth doula training, and then I did my postpartum doula training, really one right after the other, because getting into it, I didn't see them as separate. It was a completion, a continuation of the whole. So it's not, I couldn't separate those both in my mind, that they were the same thing. And then after getting into that, I started to geek out on lactation, and I got my lactation educator. And as you know, when we get into this path of support in birth and postpartum and all of that, it's like the brain fires. It's like, oh, I have to learn that. I have to go explore that, right? So, so then I went from that to lactation. I have always been a yogi, and so then I got my prenatal yoga certification, and I use that with supporting my clients prenatally. And then after working with clients, I kind of organically came into seeing that how babies are fed. And mind you, I want to say that there's a lot of ways to do this, and there's definitely a school of thought of baby led feeding, which is fantastic. But we're a culture where we get almost no postpartum support, and moms, if I can say moms, birthing people, have to go back to work too soon, right? I mean, it's crazy. And so most clients want to get some kind of sleep routine, something down as soon as possible because they got to go back to work. And babies are born nocturnal. And so how do we flip their circadian rhythms? So there's little things you can do very early on that are not sleep training. And I'm not advocating sleep training of a newborn at all. But what I found was that working with these clients, the more they fed their babies during the day and the more they disrupted that nocturnal sleep pattern, that these babies started to flip to what our day night circadian rhythms are. And they started thriving, and there was plenty of milk production. And these babies then became good sleepers very early on. And so I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. Let me investigate this some more. So then I got my sleep educator, and that's kind of my whole jam.
That's fascinating. And it is something like while we're studying the birth world, uh, more and more things pop up. And as we get clients, then they come with, well, do you do this? And what about this?
Yes,
And if you don't know, you're like, well, I don't know, but I can find out. Or I can, or for the next client, you're like, I want to be able to offer that. And then because it's just there's just so much out there that we can learn. And I always say, like, I've been doing this for 8 years in labor and delivery, and I am still learning something new every single day, which is why I
absolutely.
love doing this podcast, why I love talking to people like you who are in the birthing world and have different experiences and different education. So you're never going to learn it all. And really, for
Never.
new parents, it's so important to just focus on their baby and stay present with them, embrace those moments with them so that they can read their cues and understand that all this knowledge, all this noise that they hear from their doctors and social media and different educators, they're all fine and well, but they really need to just like pick and choose what works for them. And so having someone like yourself, like a sleep educator who is a postpartum doula who can come and really assess your individual needs. Is that what you do as well? Like you're like each family is so unique. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, I
And
love.
then oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, 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 you're fine. I'm just raving.
I look at this also through a biological and anthropological lens. And I think that there's a lot of gaps because pediatricians know very little about lactation. And you're lucky if you find a pediatrician that actually has a lactation consultant on staff. And so they're giving feeding information based on that. And I mean, still ultimately, as parents, you need to make the best choice for your family. But there is a lot of noise out there. There is a lot of people telling you how you should do things. And that's, not
Right.
how I work. I work from a frame of, well, this is an option and
Mhm.
this is an option. And you have to make, this is part of being a parent, is making those choices for yourself.
Absolutely. And it's fascinating how interlocked are the sleep for your baby and the feeding is. So when we think about how often should I feed my baby, and they say every 3 hours, and then they start cluster feeding at night, and you're like, I'm not sleeping at all now. So your sleep is affected, and your sanity is affected, and then maybe your supply is affected, and then the baby feed. It's just this cycle. So you're not promoting sleep training as a newborn, but then what kind of schedule would you recommend then in general for someone that is looking to breastfeed but is exhausted, like is up every hour feeding the baby at night? Like how do they stop that, or how, like that's great to hear, but I'll feed more during the day. My baby wants to sleep during the day. So what do I do?
Right. So, simple things you can do with light, and the brain processes cortisol and melatonin based on the sun and the moon. So, getting your babies in sunlight in the morning, because that's a different type of light that affects the brain. And then also having them in dusk, outside in dusk, if you can do that, even if it's just 10 minutes, right? And it's not enough do it in front of a window anymore, because most of our windows now have UV protection. So you kind of really need to be outside if you can. And so babies are born nocturnal. And I think that most pregnant people will realize that, as you're moving around during the day, your baby is sleeping because you're rocking the baby. Baby's like, oh, this is cool. And then you lie down to go to sleep at night, and baby's going, woo, party, right? And so, and they're in complete darkness. So we need to kind of flip that rhythm for them by disrupting the day sleep. Like, don't let them sleep more than 2 hours during the day. So I'm going to go back to, you were saying about, they're saying to feed every
Like
three
cluster
hours.
feeding. Yeah, yeah. Like in the hospital when we
It's
send
not
moms.
enough.
Yeah, we were
If
like
you
every
want to
2
supply
hours. Yeah.
it, and this is also, like, I know that when I say this and I teach this in my classes, that it seems like, oh my God, you're kidding me all the time. And it's like, yeah, if you want to supply, if you want a supply that's going to last you 6 months or beyond, and mind you, you decide when you want to stop feeding, that is totally up to you. But if you want a supply that's going to last, you're establishing that in the first 2, 3 weeks. And that really does mean all the time. So, my suggestions is to feed every 2 hours during the day to disrupt the long sleep stretches during the day. And it's a calorie gain. So, also feeding all the time, the body's going to produce more, because you're telling the body that I need to produce this much. And then if the baby does when they start to take those longer stretches at night, you can see it and you allow it, you will start to allow those to become longer and longer at night based on your baby's weight and their age. Still, I would still suggest using like an alarm at night, so that you're not going 4 hours in a sleep stretch in the first 2 weeks if your baby's weight is
Yeah. A
on
question.
this lower side,
Yeah, yeah.
right? If you got a chunk of monk and your baby's a power eater
Okay, all
and
right.
all of that, okay. But, depending on your supply as well. So part of that all the time is telling the body to produce, to produce, to produce.
So the
And
first, yeah, the first, sorry to interrupt, but the
yeah,
So you're saying for the first couple of weeks, that's when we're really creating our body's acknowledgement of how much our baby needs and when we want to feed them. So if we're
Yes.
waking up every hour at night, your body is going to continue to feed, like produce at night as much as the baby needs, and the baby's going to get used to that. But if we limit it to maybe every 4 hours at night and then every 2 hours during the day, it takes probably a little bit for our bodies to adjust and get the memo, and then our babies as well. But if we follow the routine of in the morning, go to the sunlight, go into the sun, which I love. I think I did that naturally, and it helps mom too. It helps the
Yes.
parents to be into the sun to get their, first serotonin cortisol lift and along with the baby. And then I love the dusk as well. So getting into a routine and then the bath time routine or nighttime massage routine to help baby know that it's bedtime and like maybe like a last feeding and then down and then set an alarm. Right. So it's just getting into the routine of it. And then you're going to have these adjustments where, your breast may swell up around 2 hours. You're like, oh, and then just to kind of lengthen it out slowly. That's why I tell my friends when they text me, it's like, just take maybe today 2 hours, then tomorrow 2.5, then three, then 3.5, and get to that 4 or 6. They always say, oh, my baby slept 6 hours. Oh my gosh, is he okay? So it does work those routines. So I love the desk option. And you said just for about 2 weeks that they do that and then the baby can sleep
2 to
longer?
3 weeks. I
Okay.
mean, 2 to 3 weeks. It depends. I do want to kind of, so
Yes.
actually in the
Sorry, I interrupt.
beginning,
I go on these tangents.
no, it's
I
totally
love
cool.
it.
4 hours in the beginning is too much. If you can
Okay.
get a 3 hour stretch, that's amazing.
Mhm.
But 4 hours in the first couple weeks for
At
the
night.
body's understanding of production is too long.
Right.
So you
It's a
might get a
transition.
three
Yeah.
hour and then you get a sleep stretch and then maybe you'll get a 2 hour um, and then another sleep stretch and then possibly another 3 hours, something like that. But 4 hours in the first couple weeks is a little
Okay. So
too long.
got it.
Yes,
So
you will get
after
to there pretty
you get
quickly.
to there through this transition, the first 2 to 3 weeks is really like every 2 hours, 3 hours, even at night.
No, during the day, every 2 hours.
Oh,
That's days. Every 2 hours during the day. You don't let them do those long sleep stretches yet, right? In the first
okay.
couple weeks, if you can even give it a month, every 2 hours during the day, and you will gradually start to see those night stretches get a little bit longer. So it might be 3 hours for a couple weeks, and then you can maybe bump it up to 3.5 hours for another couple weeks. But it's a slow um,
Got it. You just don't want it to
transition.
last 4 hours, is why you said set an alarm. So try to do it every
Yes.
2 hours, even at night when the baby needs, and then slowly stretch it out to 2.5, and the baby may go 3 hours, but don't let them go past 4. Is that what yours?
2 hours during the day,
Got it.
regardless. If
Regardless.
you can get a 3 hour stretch at night, take it.
Got it. Okay.
Right. Now, your baby might have other ideas, in
Right.
which case you're going to feed your baby. Like, I'm not of the mindset that if your baby's hungry, that you don't feed them. Your baby needs to eat. But if you continue with disrupting the sleep cycle during the day and have them feed every 2 hours, they're getting enough calories and you're breaking up that sleep pattern where they would be sleeping during the day so that they will switch that to nighttime. So then gradually, after a 3 hour stretch for a couple weeks, you might get then through another 3.5 at night. So you're going to slowly lengthen the night feeds.
Excellent.
So I hope that clears it up a little bit.
Yes. Sorry. So yeah, definitely. I just
Okay,
want
cool.
I wanted to make sure it was clear for
Yeah,
myself. Just because you mentioned that 4-hour alarm, and I was like, "Oh, okay, stop." Because I was always like, "Oh, well, if they go 6 hours, let them go 6 hours." I was like, "Okay, so maybe there's a chance they can go up to 4 hours. I gotta wake them up." But they're probably gonna be waking up every 2 to 3 hours for sure. So what do you
totally.
tell parents when they're just after 2 weeks, like, I've had enough wake this mom has been waking up every 2, 3 hours, and she's losing it, and she, can't really function, so is she able to maybe my husband and I did one pumping session, and I left it in the fridge so that I can have a stretch of about 5 to 6 hours of sleep, so that one in between he took that feeding. So is that something you would recommend, or are there any other options for parents that just really, really value their sleep? Maybe they need it for their own mental health. It may be a big reason why they stop feeding, or they may hire a night nanny, someone like that. So what options do those parents have?
Totally. And the pumping is a great option. So everything has risks and benefits, right? And if you are able to pump and get a 5 hour stretch, and by the way, a 5 hour stretch is considered sleeping through the night.
I'll take it.
If that does not affect your supply, you can do it. But the body still needs a frequency of stimulation in the first month, even to know that it needs to produce. Now, if you don't see a dip and you're able to do a pump and have your partner feed and you take a 5 hour stretch, and like I said, you don't see a dip in supply, fantastic. But this is the choice the parent gets to make, because maybe that sleep is more important for your well being. So I kind of look at this as, whatever choices you make as a mom, if I can say that, or the parent, that gives you peace, that's the choice that you should make, because you need to be whole and complete as a parent first. And if anything is causing you stress and anxiety, then maybe that's something that you can let go, right? Or find other options to bring in. So, again, these are the choices you get to make as a family. But if you do choose to take that 5 hour stretch soon, then you may, or too soon for your body, you may lose some milk production. That is always a possibility.
Yeah, I think I waited and started doing that around 3 or 4 weeks. Oh,
Okay,
it was just too much. She had
I get it.
I think someone told me, or I knew, like, well, I shouldn't start pumping until my milk is well established. So wait about 6 weeks, 8 weeks,
Mm,
and I couldn't do it. I said, I can't do this. I even moved the baby to another room, or far, far away from me. I had her at the bedside, and I just couldn't sleep right next to her anymore, because every time she wrestled in the bed, or like, I would just wake up if I heard her coo or anything happen. Any movement woke me up, and so I couldn't sleep. So,
okay.
or it affected my milk production. So I had to move her away. So, and it was a conversation and a decision between my husband and I. And I think you're right. This is a family conversation. And
Yeah.
when you have your own issues, and you have your own values, and you understand the risks of everything that you're doing, you can make those wise decisions for yourself. And reaching out to someone like yourself who specializes in sleep, postpartum recovery, what the mom, and even I will say mom is, or dad or wife or whoever is, it's a family circle, and it's their decision, and they need to consult and find the right answers for them, if that makes
Yes.
sense. Yes. So you're right. And so I had a question, I guess, with regards to more on the cluster feeding, just because I've had a few clients really concerned with this that they're dealing with, that the
Hmm.
baby just wants to feed all night long, every hour. So
Hmm.
how do you stop the baby from needing it every hour? You just don't feed them? You just let them cry? I don't know.
Never.
Okay.
Well, I'm not going to say never. I am not a fan of cry it out.
Mhm.
Okay, babies do cry, but I am by no means a fan of crying it out. And I want to know, so when a baby wants to cluster feed all the time, this is also where I'm a huge fan of side lie breastfeeding, or as James McKenna calls it, breast sleeping. And if you are body feeding and you have a firm mattress and you have the right setup in your home, this is the easiest way to handle and navigate cluster feeding. And babies cluster feeding are also telling the body to produce. This is what I need, what I need, this is what I need. So, how you choose to deal with that as a parent, of course, those are your choices, but the easiest way to navigate that is not by sitting up and getting your pillows and propping yourself up and doing all of these things to feed your baby, when you can simply lie on your side, bring the baby to your breast. When the baby's done, if you're not comfortable with sharing the bed, then put the baby back into. I actually love a bedside co-sleeper. I think it makes it so much easier. It's a easy this, instead of
Mhm.
picking up and putting in or doing all of these other things. You literally just move them into their space.
Love that. Yeah.
I also find too that, so your baby's just a little primate, and primates don't put their babies down away from them, right? And you understand that this environment is safe, but your baby, their brain is not wired that way. If they are not next to you or on you, then their brain is like bear, mountain lion, predator, right? And the advantage of a bedside co-sleeper, without having that wall between you and your baby, is you can just rest a hand on your baby when they get, you know, fidgety or start making little noises. If you just place a hand on them and do a couple little pats, they will often go back to sleep, right? So it's just wanting the connection
To know you're there.
more than it is needing to be back on the breast, if that makes.
Yes, yes, yes. Just because and sometimes they're not even fully awake. Like, oh, she's awake, and she just needs to know that mommy's close,
Yep.
uh, or even daddy, and they really sometimes. That's where I had a tough time though, is because I found I was every time I hand, that means I was not sleeping because every time she did that, I was waking.
Yeah.
Have to recover from that after a few weeks. So you have to figure out the tools that are available, because what works for me is going to work for someone else, and what worked for them it may not work for me. So you have to figure out and find all the tools, all the ways that you could make it work, from co-sleeping to bed sharing. And by co-sleeping, mean what you mean, like the side sleeper, uh,
Yes.
or the bassinet at the end of the room, like myself, where we just need to push them away. And then my husband was more on top of because he was a very light sleeper anyway. So instead of both of us waking up, he just went over and pat her or held
Hmm.
her, because there's something to be said about is it pheromones or when they can sense mom's breasts are close to them, they're gonna want it. So if you're laying right next to them, they may as well want to just suck, just to be maybe out of comfort more than they want to feed. But I'm sure in the first few weeks, it's all of the above. So yeah, so you just have to figure out, maybe some women might just absolutely love that, the connection, and they can sleep through that. And some women cannot. And they just get overstimulated and overtouched, and they just love their little baby, but need some space. And you can find support through that time. If you have a supportive spouse or partner, or if you don't, then for those first few weeks, bringing in your mom or your sister, or hiring a doula or someone to help you navigate this period and find what works for you, then you'll find success and maintain your mental health and have a easier recovery. So,
Yes.
yeah.
And your partner, and I love that you were saying that you guys kind of, if you can work in shifts,
Yes, yeah.
then because it is true. A lot of moms are like, I don't want anybody touching me. I'm done. I'm touched down.
Totally. It doesn't
And
take a
that's
lot,
real.
yeah.
That's
Uh-huh.
real.
Oh, for sure. And
Yeah.
I I loved I bed shared for a little bit with her while I breastfed, and I learned how to do it safely. And it just wasn't gonna work for me, at least in the beginning, because I was like, this is now I was too preoccupied with her and I woke up every time she latched, and it was just a little too much. And I found people that just absolutely loved it and it works for them. So we cannot sacrifice our mental health. We cannot sacrifice our sleep in postpartum and our recovery. From day one, we need to make sure we maintain that, and put that as the highest priority, as well as our partner, and figure out some shifts. My first baby, I didn't have a partner. I was a single mom. So that's why it
Oh,
touches me and I couldn't, so I didn't have any shifts to do, and no one was there at home with me to take those shifts, and I breastfed for about 8 weeks. You can't do it anymore, and that's okay. And
mhm.
and out of necessity, I learned how to stretch those hours out, because I was
Yeah.
like, I just can't get up. So slowly I just started, like, little by little, probably around 1 month, just started feeding her. I just started sleeping more, and then noticed she slept more. And it was just so natural. Like, it just happened that way. And
Oh,
now that
yay.
we're speaking, looking back at it, I was like, I almost did better just by doing what I needed to do with her, and without knowing anything else, than this last baby I had 20 years later, where I was like, well, I need to do this, and we need to do this, and they have a sleep schedule, and they have this, and no, 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 like all the noise in my head. And we figured it out, but it was, it felt a lot more comfortable when you come from a place, or easier, I should say, when you come from a place of, like, putting yourself first. And I think that was the benefit of doing it 20 years old. We're a little bit more, and I mean this in the best way, like a little more self-absorbed. Are we putting our own self a little bit at a priority when you're 20? I love my baby. I was very responsible. I gave her everything she needed, but I was also prioritizing my own well-being. Whereas a little later on, you're like, I just give, give, give. I had 20 more years in society and culture as a woman, and to start feeling like I needed to just give this new baby everything. And I got to wake up every 3 hours, and I got to do this and that, and that whole me first, or my prioritizing my own sleep, just kind of, I lost that somewhere. And it's so refreshing, and to have these kinds of conversations, and hear birth workers like yourself speak up about the importance of moms prioritizing themselves. along with their baby's needs. You can do, you don't have to choose. So having that conversation, if you have that support with you, use it. Find it, use it.
Yes.
It probably would have been a whole different story in my breastfeeding journey with my baby if I had some supports, but I didn't even ask. I didn't even know I needed it or what to do. So that's tough.
That I'm sorry you didn't have support in the beginning, because that would have, we're not meant to do this alone. We're
Mm-mm,
not. And, you know, babies having babies, you were young,
totally.
and I'm sure you were not around newborns, and you didn't, we are so removed from what that looks like. And so our expectations or our perception of what it's going to look like, it's like it's not even close to how it is for the
Totally.
most part. And sometimes not knowing what you don't know is a good thing, but um,
Yeah. Or just knowing that it's out there. Yeah,
mhm.
it did probably it did help me. If I knew that it was all that there was that there were answers out there and I had no idea how to get them, I don't that would probably make me feel like the naivety, is that the word? Ignorance around it probably benefited me because I just didn't know it was out there. And but then it's so much easier though when you do know that there's help out there and there's resources.
Yes.
And back then there wasn't the social media and YouTube and where all your answers are at the tip of your finger, like yeah, at the end of your fingertips. And I would I would have dove in head first. Like I would have probably been it would have been very helpful. So if a family is so they're listening to this now and she's like, oh, well, I don't want to, I want to be able to have all these tools and understand my choices. And I would love to speak with a sleep educator. How is the best way to go about finding a sleep educator like yourself or a postpartum doula? What's the difference between maybe consulting with a sleep educator and then hiring a night nanny or a postpartum doula? Is it pretty similar? I don't think every postpartum doula is a sleep educator, right? Oh, how do they find you and what's the difference?
Yeah. So this is something that's interesting too, because people call themselves night nurses, but they're actually nannies. And I have the utmost respect for nurses. If you are not an RN, you are not a night nurse. That's that's misrepresentation.
Yeah.
If you are a night nanny, and by the way, there's like it's great we have all of these choices and options based on the family's needs. So a
Right,
night
newborn sleep
nanny,
specialist, all these things that I've seen so many different names for for
right?
what they do.
So a night nanny is oh, someone who really is just kind of looking after the baby, and they'll do household things, which is great. And they're, I think, better. Well, this is just my opinion, of course. Better for a family that is later in their journey. Maybe the baby's 4 months old or older, and you already are established in your decisions and routines. So they're not really educators. They're there as an extra set of hands.
Gosh.
A newborn care specialist is someone that's focused on the needs of the baby. And if you are someone that, like, I want to sleep and please feed my baby, take care of my baby while I sleep because that's what I need, fantastic. That's more what a newborn care specialist does. A doula sees mom and baby as one unit, and it is focused a little more on mom care. So yes, we educate you on all the newborn things, and we support you with lactation, but we focus a little bit more on, you know, the mom's needs and how they are doing in this journey and helping the family and them figure out their needs. And so based on that, each person has their own skill sets that they bring to their job. Maybe the nanny is also somebody that cooks, or maybe the newborn care specialist is someone that cooks. Maybe your doula has lactation education, or they have, so we all have the things that we bring into our our tool belts. Generally with sleep, we don't start until the baby's at least 3 months old, 15 pounds. Like you want the baby to be past, we want the nervous system to be settled and the intestines to be settled before you start putting into place sleep routines, which is
Like
also,
sleep training.
I, there are sleep trainers, and that is a philosophy and that is a way to do it, which isn't, that's a choice you get to make.
Yeah.
I prefer routines because your baby's still going to be going through developmental changes, and how do you navigate those developmental changes, because your baby may be teething or something may be going on and they need you more. Are you going to not support your baby during that time with some extra snuggles and attention and care? So that's why I kind of look at sleep coaching or sleep associations as opposed to sleep training. And again, there are people like, I want my baby on a schedule and I want them doing this, and it is much more structured, and that's perfect for that kind of family. But that cry it out to me, and this is just speaking as for myself,
Yeah.
is not emotionally healthy for your child. So
Or for a mom. I can't do it. Personally, I couldn't do it. I did
yeah,
videos
it's
of
hard.
it, and I did. My husband was away, and we tried it one time. I tried it twice actually. Tried it around 6 months old, and I videotaped, and I looked back at it, and she was crying, yes, but I was a mess. It was so hard for me, and we did it while he was away. He was out of the country at the time. So I'm like,
Mhm.
that's perfect because if we feed off of each other, we'll break, or or we just couldn't do it together because we have conflicting like when to go in. So I'm like, let me just try on my own while you're away. And I couldn't. It was just too hard. And I just see the look in my eyes when I revisit that video, and I was suffering too. It's like this instinct that I need to go be with my baby. And what's
Yeah,
funny is I said, okay, we're not doing that again. We waited, and around 10 months old, we tried it again, and it was so easy. Like, she just wasn't ready at 6 months.
yeah,
Sometimes you have to listen to your gut at that time and, okay, if this is too hard or you're not feeling right about it, look into other ways. There's so many methods out there. There's so much teaching, and try to adjust and maybe retry when they're more developed.
yeah,
Tried, and at 10 months, she took to it very, very quickly and very easily, and she slept great until probably about 2 years old, and that's a different story. But,
there you
yeah.
go. Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah, sometimes they're not ready, and then I think we did it at we were thinking around 4 months because that's when they say that they're ready, that they're developed, but she wasn't. And we tried again at 6 months, and she wasn't, and that's okay, and I wasn't either. So it's for the baby's anxiety and level is probably not as healthy, and it could be a conflicting topic, and the reason why it may be controversial is because everyone's different. The baby's different, the moms are different, what they think is best is different, their values. So I don't think it's so much controversial as just unique and individualized. Right? I just
With that, you know, kind of how I work with families is that you're not allowed, you have to listen to what your comfort level is in allowing your baby to cry. And maybe it's 10 minutes, maybe it's 15 minutes, but I don't ever agree with purple crying. I don't agree with allowing your child to get into upset like that. And you're never away from them when they're crying. So babies cry, your kids, you I'm sure have experienced that. They fall down, they skin their knee, they're upset, they cry, and you console them.
yeah.
And I love you and I'm with you. And, now it's time to go back to bed or whatever. But each family gets to decide that length of time that they're comfortable with allowing the baby to cry before you have certain skills to jump in and soothe them and then get them back into the sleep cycle, right? So
Yeah.
it's never allowing them to just, because it's heartbreaking. I don't know how you can just allow them
No. And we could really go on
to
about,
cry.
yeah, I mean, we could probably do a whole topic on sleep training itself. But for time reasons, I just have just to take I literally could talk 2 hours and no one wants to listen to me talk for 2 hours. I know that this is
I don't know. It's good.
it is good. I know, thank you.
Uh-huh.
And you too, but so let's take it back before we finish up. I just have to
Excuse
know.
me.
Okay, so we're pregnant. We are preparing for baby to come. We have
Yes.
heard that, we're not going to get any sleep for the first, whatever. So we're going to be sleep deprived. Everyone and their sisters have told us about sleep deprivation and breastfeeding and all this, but we really want to do it. We're going to breastfeed. It's going to be good. I can tough it out. We'll be good. I have my partner with me. What would you give? And I'm putting you kind of on the spot. I didn't tell you, we didn't plan our questions out, but let's say, like, what could I do to prepare? Like, what is the best thing to make sure that I get the sleep that's so important? So you can take a moment to think about it, but what tip would you give me? Okay, I'm listening, I'm pregnant. So what do I do to prepare? Like right now while I'm still pregnant. What would you
Well, we would talk about what your sleep is like prenatally as a family.
Uh-huh.
How do you have your home set up? What is your lighting like? Are you still on your tablets
Uh-huh.
and your phone and your computer and all of these things before you go to sleep? What is like there's some simple supplements that you can do, nothing crazy, but have your magnesium at night, right? Instead of taking that earlier in the day. There's little things that you can tweak that's important to support you prenatally in sleeping. Because if you're not sleeping before this baby comes, you're going to be in a world of hurt when the baby does come. So, how do you set your home and your family up to support better sleep for you? Then, once the baby gets here, then there is tricks with lighting and other things in the home, and how you are going to set up your environment for the new baby, which again, rooming in the beginning, if you are going to body feed, is much easier. Getting up and going into another room to feed your baby is super disruptive. So how can we create um, sleep situations that are minimally disruptive at night while you're feeding your baby? So we go into that kind of stuff. And
I absolutely
yeah,
love that answer. Oh my, like, I love it. So start setting up that routine and maximizing your sleep habits before you ever have your baby, like the TV.
yes,
tablet. What time are you eating at 10 o'clock at night and then watching TV until you turn it off and go to sleep and your lights are all on and all of this, not all of this, then yeah, you're probably setting yourself up for a really, really, really hard time and a hard adjustment
Yes.
for a baby as well. So get everyone on board with your sleep habits and start visualizing that routine once the baby gets there too, like where the baby's gonna sleep and what the schedule might be and what kind of conversations and bring that up as a conversation between your family before it ever before the baby ever gets there. I love that, like getting into supplements, figuring out what problems are you having right now and addressing them. And then when the baby comes, it's just the baby that we can focus on now. And
Yeah.
minimally and disruptions, just minimal disruptions will occur. I really, really love that. I know I put you kind of on the spot there, but it was really great. So thank you for that. Is there anything else you want to add before we close up?
um,
I know,
just
on the spot
to
again, right?
everyone watching, good luck and
Yeah.
trust that you will know the right choice to make. I think that's super important. Don't
Yeah.
listen to everybody else.
Yeah.
Listen to yourself.
Yeah. Instead of thinking about all the problems that are might happen, today society we can get so overwhelmed and anxious, worrying about, well, this might happen, this might happen. Focus on the
Yeah.
present and what's going on right now, and understand that there's tools out there and there's resources. And speaking of resources, where would we be able to find you if we wanted to learn more?
Well, you could find me at doulamellie.com. So that's DOULAMELLIE.com.
Excellent. All right. Well, everyone, please reach out to her if you have any questions. And again, follow me at My Friend's a Nurse. And thank you for listening to the BirthLink podcast. Thank you, Melly.
Thank you.
What an amazing discussion with Melanie. Thank you again so much for listening in and for Melanie for being here with us. We got to our episode 9 and we're moving on to 10. Next week, we're going to discuss the placenta, delivering your placenta, and Pitocin and how they're correlated. We know Pitocin helps reduce the risk of hemorrhage, but how are they associated, the placenta and Pitocin? Let's get into the history of Pitocin and how we deliver our placenta on the next episode in the first 15 series as they continue. Message me anytime, as you know, at Colette@myfriendsnurse.com. And let me know if you're interested in working with me as a client. I'm always accepting new clients and would love to meet you and see how I can serve you and make sure that you have the birth that you deserve and dream of. Let's get you your dream birth. And knowledge is power. That's where you start. So thank you again for listening in, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to My Friends a Nurse presents the BirthLink podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and found it valuable. Before we go, a quick reminder. The information shared on this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. Always consult with your healthcare provider for any medical concerns or questions. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. Your support helps us reach more people and continue to bring you great content. Until next time, stay healthy and stay informed.